Welcome to a learning clip brought to you by the Agile Change Leadership Institute. As part of your certificate program, you can watch these short clips delivered by Dr. Jen Frahm or Lena anytime, anywhere, again and again.
Hi, I'm Lena. I'm one of the co-founders of the Agile Change Leadership Institute and one of your instructors in this course. Now, we are delighted to welcome you to our online credential, Agile Change Leader. Now, while a great deal of the material in this program has remained relevant up till today, we wanted to refresh it with some new findings and some more resources. So, along with Dr. Jen Frahm, we are excited that we now have a revised program for you. So we continue our strong focus on leading continuous change with confidence and calm in agile environments. And we also know that in more stable environments, each change initiative once had a clear beginning, a middle, and an end with their linear and predictable theme. And we also know that we're not operating that way anymore. Research has shown us that we are now doing more change than ever before in our organisations. For example, Gartner research has identified that one of the top 5 challenges for HR leaders is change management, with 77% of HR leaders saying that their employees are experiencing fatigue in an environment of overwhelm. So the key conclusion here is that change is both stacked and continuous. So this impact of the continuous change and relentless change was also highlighted in PwC's survey on their global workforce on hopes and fears, acknowledging that even positive change can be stressful. Over 60% of employees said that they have experienced more change at work in the last year than the 12 months prior. And over 30% reported that they've experienced at least 4 significant changes to their work, including changes to team structures and role responsibilities. So this means that leaders need to apply an effort in making the case for change to employees, as it's increasingly recognised that change fatigue and overwhelm is real.
That's a lot, right? I'm Dr. Jen Frahm, and I'm going to build on what Lena has shared about this disruptive environment requiring new ways of working, of leading, of thinking, to introduce you to 3 concepts that are increasingly helpful in making sense of the environment around us. So these concepts are VUCA, VUCA Prime, and Barney. Now, VUCA is possibly the one that you are most familiar with because it's the oldest of the terms. It's been around since 1985. It was first described by economists and university professors Warren Bennis and Bert Nanis in their book, Leaders' Strategies for Taking Charge. Now, not long after that, it was adopted by the US Army War College in their response to the collapse of the USSR, with the demise of the Eastern Bloc as the one enemy. The challenge was to find and implement new ways of seeing and responding to what they saw as conditions of complexity, volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity. Now, for any of you who have worked in a war room in your organisation or perhaps been part of a strike team or a tiger team, you will know that the business world loves a military metaphor. So perhaps it's not so surprising that not long after those early 90s, the term VUCA found its way into the MBA curriculums across the world, and thus legions of management consultants landed in your organisations talking up the power and challenges of VUCA. So some 22 years after that, Bob Johansson, one of the futurists with the Institute for the Future, came along and suggested that perhaps it was more useful to consider a behavioural leadership model that addresses VUCA. So with that, VUCA Prime was put forward, and this was around 2007. He suggested that there were a range of things that leaders could do to lean into the VUCA environment. So that would be focusing on vision, providing a compelling vision and purpose for change. And that really addressed the volatility as it assisted people to be able to explore and experiment and drive understanding. That's really helpful, we know, in addressing uncertainty of VUCA. Of course, the golden rule of agility, simplify where possible. That's our way to clarity. And then finally, the importance of being adaptive in your approach as a leader. However, we did find that when it got to around March 2020 and the organisations were being turned on their head in how they had to address the extreme volatility of the pandemic, Lena and I both questioned a number of times, had we really fully understood what volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous meant? Because it felt like we were now operating in an environment which was VUCA on steroids. So accordingly, we found that in about March 2020, another one of the futurists from the Institute of Future, Jaume Cascio, presented a new model which was more updated for the current events and perhaps replaced the VUCA framework. Cascio suggested that the environment we were now operating in, so post-pandemic climate crisis, social injustice, was better represented by the acronym BARNI, which stood for brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. And again, he proposed leadership behaviours that would support that environment or how to work in that environment. They were to build capacity and resilience to respond with empathy and mindfulness, using fresh eyes and no expectations, and then to deploy transparency and intuition. So this leaves us with the question, what do we do with these three frameworks? Are we throwing out VUCA for VUCA Prime? Are we now throwing out VUCA Prime for BARNI? And you'll certainly hear people making those arguments that one is superior to the other. However, Lena and I both take the approach that there are strengths in all three concepts. And as you work through our lessons, you're going to work through the experiments and find that we adopt principles from both BARNI and VUCA Prime. And we encourage you to think about your organisations repeatedly in terms of what does this volatility mean to us? Where do we go with the uncertainty? What actually is complex and what is simple? And then where is there extreme ambiguity? So whether it is VUCA, BARNI, stacked and continuous change, we know that we need to think differently, work differently, learn differently, and lead differently. So how do we equip you for this turbulence, this high volume of change and deep, deep uncertainty? So to start with, you will find that this course, like our others, is built on 5 principles of success. We make it safe to learn. We structure in such a way that you are scaffolding knowledge. We enable immediate application to make the learning concrete for you. We encourage reflection and iteration, and we make it really real, not abstract and theoretical. We do this by providing crucial and contemporary content, experiments to try things in the workplace, and of course, we use micro-learning, bite-sized modules. So why the emphasis on micro-learning? Well, you don't have to do this in one hit. We recognize that you're exceptionally busy, and it is helpful to make regular time to be revisiting these, but the evidence shows now that there are a number of benefits to using micro-learning when it comes to updating and making sure that you're future fit. We see increased speed to knowledge. When you look at cohorts who have used micro-learning, there is improved completion of courses. It's ultimately very brain-friendly, much easier to take in these small bites of learning. You can do micro-learning anytime, anywhere. You're not restricted to being in a classroom or being at a desk. It's much more aligned to lifestyle, right? You might be doing this on the tram or the train or the bus home. It is self-directed, so you have autonomy over your learning, and it really supports peer-to-peer learning. Now, the 6 leadership shifts that we're going to cover in these lessons are, first of all, the 3 R's, which looks at really change resilience, change readiness, and change resistance. And all of our courses or all of our lessons, we cover this in terms of where did we start in this area? Where are we now? How might you apply them? Our leadership module is the one that's had the biggest update in this version. So we have now included change sponsorship and agile governance in that leadership module. We're covering human-centered change, so thinking about psychological safety, how we might use personas and people, looking at people and employee journeying in your leadership of change. We cover the 3 C's, which we understand as change communication, collaboration and co-creation, and community. Those who are numbers people will recognize I just had 4 C's in there. So we're taking a few liberties there. Nevertheless, it's what you need. We, of course, cover off Agile and some of the core concepts in Agile. And then one of our most important modules is on the qualities of what you need to bring forward to be one of these incredibly effective leaders of stacked and continuous change.
Now, this program is self-paced with feedback provided along the way. So when you submit your reflective learning insights, they are also part of the course assessment. So with each module, there are multi-choice quiz questions to complete. There'll be experiments and reflections to carry out and record your insights, and resources to download. And while you're watching those learning clips, remember you can slow them down or speed them up. So look for the wheel icon on the bottom right of your screen. Now, this process is all explained in your learner package, which we recommend you download when you enroll in the program. And while you're there, take a look at the progress tracker in the learner package. Now, this page is really useful to keep track of where you're at, because we know that our brains love progress, and seeing it visually really helps us stay motivated. Now, we very much look forward to reading your submissions, so enjoy your learning journey to becoming an even better future fit leader.